Everyone, Detective Acting Chief Superintendent John Watson is my name from the Director of Crime Operations at State Crime Command. I'm here today to brief you on Strike Force Chellington. An announcement was made last week concerning the seizure of approximately 750 kilograms of methamphetamine, otherwise known as ice, by officers from the Drugs and Firearms Squad in collaboration with external agencies including Border Force. That investigation has progressed since that announcement, and what I'd like to do now is hand over to Assistant Commissioner Erin Dale, and she'll tell you a little bit more about the point of seizure, and then after that I'll come back.
Thank you, John. With this consignment, following on from last week we talked about the 24 containers coming through, and ABF officers identified initial anomalies and initially detected 750 kilos of methamphetamine. Joined to that shipment, we had further consignment, which is about 19 containers, arrived last week into Port Botany. On further examination, a further 1,060 kilogram of methamphetamine were detected. This brings the total seizure to over 1.8 tonnes of methamphetamine, which has a street value of over $1.6 billion. The concealments were very sophisticated in nature as to concealed built-in marble slabs, tiles. Our ABF officers work tirelessly on a day-to-day basis, not only in this instance with New South Wales Police, with the state law enforcement authorities, but also with our federal law enforcement authorities, as well as internationally, to collect intelligence, which actually led to identification of these consignments. We also have highly trained officers combined with the additional intelligence to technology, and also including detector dogs, to be able to identify any type of concealments. Doesn't matter how sophisticated the concealments are, our officers are well trained and have the right equipment to be able to identify these consignments. So it is a message for the organised crime, and for the organised crime to think of the audacity of them to think that they can bring through such a large quantity without detection by the law enforcement authorities. So our ABF officers work day in and day out with our counterparts to identify these goods and actually stop them from reaching our community. And in this instance, we referred this matter to New South Wales Police for further investigations, and John will take through the outcomes of that.
So as you've heard, this is the next phase of the operation, and in fact the operation remains ongoing. Owing to the recent seizures, over 1,060 kilos of methamphetamine was seized. It was deconstructed by specialist officers attached to the Drug and Firearms Squad. And at this stage, no one has been charged in respect of this particular consignment, although they are being considered in relation to the broader investigation. The investigation has resulted in 1.8 tonnes of methamphetamine, the biggest in Australia's history. It showcases the strength of law enforcement throughout Australia, not just in New South Wales. And I think it emphasises the relationships that we have with Border Force, Australian Federal Police as well. To date, our investigation has been focusing on onshore. But the AFP are now focusing their efforts overseas with us. We will not stop until every line of inquiry in relation to this seizure has been made. Probably it's worth noting that the factory that was being used as the final destination point last week was dedicated to dismantling these pallets, removing drugs from the consignments in a very quick fashion, And the capability that this syndicate has demonstrated to us in terms of volume and size is enormous. These figures are staggering. I think we are all better off for these arrests and these seizures, and certainly our communities are much better off for these seizures. I'll take questions.
So I'm just trying to work out where this sits. The 1.8 tonnes is an Australian record combined. Last week, 750 kilograms was a record. Was that an Australia-wide record or a record for statewide police? And this now combined makes it an Australian record? I'm just trying to get my head around that.
Certainly, no, happy to clarify. So last week, the Commissioner mentioned that it was a record for State Crime Command. That being a New South Wales police-led operation. What we're announcing here today is, in fact, of all the seizures in Australia, this has been the biggest and most significant seizure to date. 1.8 tonnes. It is enormous.
Specifically the drug involved as well. It is destructive in terms of societal damage from individuals, from law enforcement, from ongoing crimes from people who are on it, from ongoing crimes from people who are trying to scrap together some money to get more of it. I mean, what does it mean from that perspective?
There is no question methamphetamine or ice is an insidious drug. It rips apart people's lives, families and local communities. This type of amount has the potential to absolutely devastate rural or regional areas, and it had the potential to be distributed right across our nation. It is significant.
Does the size of this seizure speak to a demand for ice picking up on the streets? Are you seeing more arrests in relation to the drug?
So we know that Sydney in particular, but New South Wales has the highest demand for these type of drugs. It doesn't indicate that demand is increasing, but it does indicate that New South Wales, and we know New South Wales is the main transport hub for some of these freights. So we know it's an area that organised crime do focus on, which is why we have to work collaboratively with our law enforcement partners.
What sort of dent will this put in street supply?
Look, I don't think there's any doubt that this seizure will be felt for weeks to come by many high, mid and lower level suppliers. I think that the amount of harm that has been reduced here is significant. This seizure is the biggest in Australia's history. So what we're seeing now is the syndicate that was operating locally on our shores, they had international connections. So we're looking well into that.
John, you only started this strike force this year. This must be a double-edged sword in some ways. It's this massive force, but to know that much was coming to Australia, how does that sit with you? Do you feel there's more coming, or?
So we started this in June of 2022, so some months ago. Of course, we're only as good as our intelligence, but knowing what we know now and what we have learned subsequent to the arrest of last week, there was evidence of a previous shipment, and we're looking into that. So yes, we don't know how long they've been operating for, but it is certainly a line of inquiry that we're keen to understand. And in fact, if anyone has any information around what was going on around some of these factories, anyone knows anything around this syndicate, please, Crime Stoppers, 1800 333 000.
And that now has potential to aid law enforcement overseas. Is that what you're looking at now? Is where those syndicates were overseas?
So we're working with law enforcement now, and in particular the Australian Federal Police. Their focus has shifted offshore, and we are keen to learn more about this syndicate.
Can we say where in particular offshore? Are there countries we can identify, or?
Well, so the Middle Eastern region is probably our main focus, but I certainly wouldn't restrict the investigation just to that region either.
Where did this shipment come from?
So the Middle East.
UAE, same as the first one?
So the consignment details were identical, and but our intelligence has shifted fairly squarely on the Middle East.
It's not as if you're telling the bad guy something that they don't already know. Is there another consignment on the way?
So again, those inquiries are still underfoot, so the investigation remains ongoing.
These men that have been arrested, do you think they're major players at all or low level in the syndicate?
Well, we know that the people here were in fact directing traffic. They were here with an express intent on getting these pallets and moving the product. So they are no doubt in my mind proper upliners, and our focus though is those that have organised a shipment from overseas.
Were they known to police prior?
Sorry?
Were they known to police prior, these men?
No.
The concealments were described as sophisticated. What sets this method of concealment apart, and are you noticing that smugglers are becoming more savvy with their methods?
Okay, so what I might do is just hand that one back over to Erin, and yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we are seeing different type of concealments. That's why we've been working very hard on training our ABF officers and also looking at our technologies and try to stay ahead of the game to be able to identify those consignments. And again, as John said, the intelligence is a very important component to actually complete that picture.
Have you seen this method before of concealing drugs within marble slabs?
We have seen multiple methods. This type of methods, no, we haven't actually seen before, not to my knowledge, anyway. But you know, our detection technology, X-rays, and all other detection technologies able to identify these type of methodologies.
The specialised factory for getting the drugs out, was that here in Sydney?
We'll pass that on to.
Yeah, so that was announced last week. It was in Homebush West.
For the ongoing investigation, somewhere along the food chain of organised crime will be some very angry people right now. Are you working in tandem with other colleagues in state crime to look at that angle, people chasing money and what that could mean?
Well, I don't think there's any question at the heart of these activities. It's about profit. So there are a number of lines of inquiry in respect of this, and yes is the answer to the question. We don't isolate ourselves in the investigation. We do work with others.
Just to clarify what you said before, you said the three people that have been arrested and not arrested in connection to the 1,060 kilos. There was the 750, is that right?
So yes, we have 3 people currently before the courts. That was part of the announcement last week. In respect of this seizure, no one has been charged with this particular offence at this stage.
These 3 will have to be surely looked at, and they're in jail. Will they be charged? Is that the intention?
So, again, it's probably early days for that, but there are a number of forensics to be done on this particular consignment, and those people are now before the court, so it's probably not appropriate for me to comment just now.
One more question, guys. What's the jail time they were facing this?
Look, all of these people that we've managed to arrest, they have been bail refused and they are facing life.
John, can I just ask quickly, this is now the new record. How much bigger is it compared to the last record? Like, were you personally staggered at the size of this?
Look, I've already said these figures are staggering. I think this has overtaken the last record by a few hundred kilos. So it's not just a couple of kilos in this, it is a significant seizure.
Perfect, thank you everyone. Take a couple of minutes and then we'll do the other. It's
And
actually
who do we have
200.
back in the second one?
We've got Grant Taylor, our other detective superintendent. He's just about to...
Will we be able to ask other questions and other police stories today?
Potentially. Potentially.
There's a few
We're
others
just
floating around.
Understand there's a few others floating around, so we'll just have a couple of things.
Lovely.
Chief superintendent isn't running away at this stage.
And you were saying the previous record is 200 kilos.
I believe
and
it's
where
from
was this?
Victoria.
Victoria.
So
No
double
worries,
check
thank
that
you.
with
Oh, awesome.
AFP.
Thank
Thank you.